Welcome back everyone to Behind the Arc Basketball on YouTube. In this video, I'm going to talk about my first round predictions for picks number 11 through 20 in my 2020 NBA mock draft. Now this video is part 2 of a 3-part video, so after watching my second video of picks number 11 through 20, make sure to go on over and watch my 2 other videos with picks number 1 through 10, my first video in a separate video, and my third video with picks number 21 through 30. I'll put the links down in the description below to the 2 other videos of 1 through 10 and 21 through 30. So we will continue once again here with the first round of my NBA mock draft with number 11 in my prediction video. We'll take a look at number 11 here with Theo Maledon of the San Antonio Spurs. Maledon plays point guard. He is 19 years old. He played this past season for Asvel out of the LNB Pro A League in France. He averaged 7.4 points per game, 3.1 assists per game, and shot the ball 45.6% from the floor professionally in the international scene. Maledon is a young player. He does struggle with finding consistency, but he does have a ton of upside as he should be able to continue to make large steps forward in the right direction to improve throughout his career here in the NBA. Maledon is good size. He's a 6'5" point guard. He can defend opponents at multiple positions as well. And what's ironic here is that Maledon played for Asvel, which is owned by former San Antonio Spurs star, 4-time NBA champion, 2007 NBA Finals MVP Tony Parker, as Tony Parker happened to be a late first-rounder of the 2001 NBA draft that played point guard as well, and he is actually the owner of the team that Maledon played professionally this past season overseas. But with 5 players currently on the roster with over 10 seasons of experience for San Antonio for this upcoming season, the Spurs are expected to make major offseason moves to rebuild in the upcoming future and bring in younger pieces here for the team for the future, as well as the Spurs need to add in more depth to the point guard position, and that's where Maledon could very well find himself to be the next pick for San Antonio. Now we'll move on here. Number 12 of my NBA mock draft goes out to Aaron Nesmith, as I have him picked by the Sacramento Kings. He is a small forward. He played college basketball this past season for Vanderbilt, played in 14 games in which he was on fire shooting from the floor. That was until a right foot injury unfortunately derailed and ended his season. Nesmith averaged 23 points per game. He also shot the ball at an insane 52.2% from three-point range. The worry for me, though, that I have about him is the cupcake schedule that he played against playing college basketball for Vanderbilt. He was able to light it up against competition here, but very small sample sizes. He only ended up playing 14 games. He happened to go on a team with Vanderbilt that went 8-6 with him on the roster, on the court playing, as the Commodores that he played with, the only power conference team they happened to play against out of the 14 games happened to be the Auburn Tigers in SEC play. Nesmith had multiple games with 20-plus points, and he also had 2 games in which he scored 34 points. He made 7 three-pointers in 3 separate games. It happened against Southeast Missouri State, the Richmond Spiders, and UNC Wilmington. Also, he happened to knock down 8 3-point shots against SMU. So, if he can build up what he was doing during his sophomore year of college for Vanderbilt and take his offense to an elite NBA level, that's going to help out the Sacramento Kings a ton here. Just the only worry I have about him is the schedule that he played against was basically a cupcake schedule with a lot of mid-major teams in there, basically, that he played 14 games during his college career for his sophomore season for Vanderbilt. But I see that he's going to be a scoring machine, I feel like, in the NBA. If he should be able to help out Sacramento, and the Kings should have an even deeper roster with their shooting offense when they added Aaron Nesmith to the bunch here with guards on their roster. Now we'll move on here. Number 13 on the list happens to be Tyrese Maxie. From the Kentucky Wildcats, he played college basketball for. I have Maxie here going to the New Orleans Pelicans at 13th overall. Maxie averaged 14 points per game at shooting guard this past season, his freshman season for the Wildcats. He has a high ceiling coming to the NBA here. He was clutch, man, for Kentucky this past season. He had some big moments in there. 26 points in the season opener against Michigan State. He also scored a career high in the rivalry game against Louisville back in December. He had a clutch shot in overtime to put the game away. But aside from his key moments, Maxie, he did struggle sometimes with his consistency to make some of the shots during like the first half of the season in some of those games. But he started to improve during the course, the second half of the season there for Tyrese Maxie. And he is the type of player here that he isn't afraid to take the big shot. He can score from anywhere on the court and make the tough shots when needed. As Maxie, he can play really well through contact. He plays with a lot of toughness. He is a fierce competitor. The one thing that Maxie will need to improve upon, though, is his three-point shooting as a shooting guard. He's still young, though, at 19 years old and has a ton of upside there. So the Pelicans, they're going to need a ton of help there with their bench scoring for this upcoming season, as their bench blew quite a bit of leads from this season, as Tyrese Maxie, he should be able to help out the Pelicans a ton with a bench scoring production, coming off the bench and provide the spark needed for the Pelicans if Maxie happens to take the appropriate steps needed to an upward trend here to build forward his NBA career. Now we move on. Number 14 on the list here for my NBA mock draft prediction video goes out to Precious Atua, as he played power forward this past season for the Memphis Tigers. I got him drafted by the Portland Trail Blazers. Atua is coming off a freshman season in which he was top 5 in the American with points scored per game and rebounds per game. He averaged just under 16 points per game, and also he averaged a double-double as he was the leading rebounder in the American, averaging 10.8 rebounds per game. Also had just under 2 blocks per game as well. Atua had 20 double-doubles in college. He posted a career-high 22 rebounds, along with 22 points against Tulane. Atua is known to be a strong and physical defender. He is also a solid rebounder. He did have some inconsistencies, though, with a shooter. He did, however, have some sharp performances, but some duds in there as well, just like the sharp performance here. 8 for 9 shooting against Jackson State, but the games that he needed to improve upon that he struggled in, he's going to have to build off of those in the NBA, where he struggled against the tougher competition like the Houston Cougars, where he only shot the ball 1 for 9 from the floor in that game. Atua would also need to build up his free throw shooting to make it translate over to the NBA. He shot the ball really low at a 60% at the free throw line while at Memphis. The Trailblazers, though, they rank 8th in the NBA in points scored, but happen to be only 26th in the NBA when it comes to defense. So I feel like that's where the Trailblazers can use a ton of help here from Atua, since he's a solid defender, double-double beast his freshman year in college for Memphis. The Trailblazers also rank last in the NBA in most rebounds allowed per game to their opponents, so Atua will be a major factor there. Solid pickup to help out Portland on the boards and on the defensive end of the floor. Now we'll move on. Number 15 in my NBA mock draft prediction video goes out to Cole Anthony. I actually had him like a top 5 pick around like November to start off the college basketball season, but unfortunately injuries basically made his stock in the draft go a whole lot lower. I've got him back at 15 here. So Cole Anthony played point guard this past season for the North Carolina Tar Heels. I got him taken by the Orlando Magic. Anthony's draft stock, though, what I just said, largely affected with that knee injury. Missed 9 games for UNC, and also it didn't help out with UNC's poor performance on the court with a season that they had a losing record in, as it was a nightmare for UNC. But for Anthony, he had a couple big games scoring-wise for the Tar Heels in the high 20s, one 30-point game as well, and that happened to be the season opener where he scored 34 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists against Notre Dame. Towards the end of the season, though, the problems of struggling happened, though, for Cole Anthony, as he struggled to find that consistency, as he only shot the ball 9 for 34 from the floor during his final 3 games for UNC, as that's the thing that he's going to need to improve upon, is his three-point shooting. He only shot the ball at 34.8% from three-point range. As Anthony, he happened to have flashes of being a knockdown shooter from this past season of a three-ball shooter. He had a 2-game span in which he combined for 11 for 16 from three-point range in those 2 games combined against Syracuse and Wake Forest. So if he can do that, he would be a solid help towards the Orlando Magic. Now, Cole Anthony, he's seen to be an athletic point guard here who is aggressive, hungry, and plays with a ton of confidence. The Magic happen to need a lot of point guard depth there in their roster. This season, Markelle Fultz happened to be a difference maker and is starting to finally progress towards the Orlando Magic, but say if Markelle Fultz goes down, they need another point guard in there in the mix to take over for the future. Behind Markelle Fultz at the moment is DJ Augustin for the Orlando Magic, and he's basically a rotational bench piece at best and not a starter there for Orlando. So the Magic, they need to find, in my opinion, another young quality point guard that can score and create shots at a high level there. And I see Cole Anthony to be a solid option to fill that spot. Now we'll move on back over to number 16 as the Minnesota Timberwolves have their second pick here in the NBA draft. I went over the first one in my first prediction video. And number 16, I got Josh Green, shooting guard from Arizona this past season, going over to Minnesota. Green averaged 12 points per game for the Wildcats this past season. He didn't have a strong shooting season, though, for Arizona. He's going to have to build up offensively throughout his NBA career if he wants to stay in the NBA, but he can offer a ton defensively there for the T-Wolves. He had 9 games this past season for Arizona with 3 steals, and he also had 3 games with 4 steals. Green, though, he struggled shooting, trying to find that consistency during the beginning and the middle of the season at times, but he started to pick up towards the end of the season. There's a lot to be admired, though, as he improved tremendously towards the end. During the final 5 games of the season, Green went 9 for 13 from three-point range. It's not really a high volume there of number there for in those 5 games to shoot the ball at 13 attempts from behind the arc, but it happens to be an encouraging sign, though, of Josh Green's improvement from three-point range. Minnesota ranked 28th in the NBA in points allowed this season, and also in three-point shooting, so Josh Green, if he can sustain that and keep on getting to be a better shooter and improving at that level, as well as what he can already offer being a solid defender, he can help out the T-Wolves a ton there. I feel like the Timberwolves are going to have to use another defender and could possibly take Josh Green there and build him up as well as a 3-ball shooter. So he's at 16. We'll move on here, my NBA mock draft, to number 17 as we go to the Boston Celtics, as I have them taking small forward Siddiq Bay from Villanova. Siddiq Bay, he doubled his point average at Villanova this past season. From freshman year to sophomore year, he made the jump. He averaged 8.2 points per game his freshman season to sophomore season, which he almost doubled out with 16.1 points per game. Bay had multiple games in which he had made at least 4 3-point shots from behind the arc, or that he had multiple games that he scored 20 or more points in. He is solid from behind the arc as well. He led the Big East in 3-point shooting percentage. He knocked down 45% of his 3-point shots. Siddiq Bay is admired because of his versatility. He's a two-way player who can defend multiple positions. He can come in clutch for the Celtics as well. And also, he is not afraid to take the big shot and tough shots as well there. He can light it up from 3-point range, and Bay can also have an impact as a role player, I feel like, from the start for the Celtics. One of the things that Boston lacked this season in the NBA happened to be their scoring production inside with their second unit. They didn't really have a spark there off the benches. Their starting lineup is great as far as their players there for the Celtics, but they need to find a spark there with their bench. And I feel like that's where Siddiq Bay can come in and hit some big shots from the bench for the Boston Celtics. I've got him at 17 going to the Celtics. Now we'll take a look here. Number 18, a high-level scorer going out here for 18, happens to be Kyrie Luis Jr., going over to the Dallas Mavericks. He played point guard this past season for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Lewis is 6'3". He is a small point guard, 165 pounds, but he happens to be one of the fastest players in this NBA draft. He is basically the style of offense, a run the floor. That's how he played under Nate Oates at Alabama. Lewis averaged 18.5 points per game, 4.5 assists per game, and he played for the number 3 scoring offense in all college basketball for the Crimson Tide. He is built to run the floor, and he will just not be a problem offensively for the Dallas Mavericks. It should be fun to watch there with him playing with Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis with the Dallas Mavericks. But he was consistent this past season for most of the season, making shots from the floor. He shot the ball just under 46% from the floor. He had a couple of games in which he struggled shooting, though, but my main concern is this about Lewis, is that he didn't really have the opportunity to play against standout defenses this past season for college basketball. I feel like Lewis would be able to be a solid fit, though, if he's able to take that jump there once they're able to build him up against a tougher defensive competition. The Mavericks, already with a loaded offense, Luka Doncic, Porzingis, and Tim Hardaway, as they could use another weapon here, I feel like, to make this team even more of a larger defensive or offensive threat on the court with Kyrie Luis Jr. in the mix from Alabama over to the Dallas Mavericks. Now we'll move on here. Number 19 on the list of my NBA mock draft prediction video happens to be Patrick Williams. He played small forward for the Florida State Seminoles. I have him going to the Milwaukee Bucks. So Patrick Williams happens to be one of the youngest players here in this NBA draft. he is a developing player for sure as well. He has a ton of upside here with a bunch of future potential. His numbers from this past season aren't really off the charts because he played at Florida State. And if you didn't watch Florida State's basketball team this season, they had one of the deepest teams in all college basketball. They went 9 players in the rotation there that averaged over 4 points per game. Williams was basically the main man to do basically everything for the Seminoles this past season. He averaged 9.2 points per game, 4 rebounds per game. He averaged an assist per game, a block per game, and a steal per game. And also, he did this while shooting the ball at just under 46% from the floor and just under 84% at the free throw line. Knocking down 3-point shots, that's going to be a work in progress for Patrick Williams since he only shot the ball at around 32% from 3-point range for the Seminoles. But he can offer a ton defensively there. He is a tremendous athlete as well. Williams should be able to help out the Milwaukee Bucks. And since Milwaukee has the best record in the NBA, I feel like the Bucks don't really need to take a player here in the draft that is ready to play right away for them for next season. What Milwaukee can do with Patrick Williams is that they can let him develop in his system so he can keep on improving, and hopefully down the road he can be a starter there when he's ready years down the road for the Milwaukee Bucks. So I see Patrick Williams from the Florida State Seminoles going to the Milwaukee Bucks at number 19. And now to the final pick here of video number 2, my NBA mock draft video, picks number 11 through 20, goes out to Jalen McDaniels, heading to the Brooklyn Nets. He played power forward this past season for the Washington Huskies. McDaniels played his freshman season at Washington. He averaged 13 points per game, just under 6 rebounds per game, and also had 1.4 blocks per game. McDaniels is known for his defensive capabilities. He's got great size, and also he's a solid rebounder with a couple big rebounding games in there for the Huskies this past season. His offense, however, still happens to be a work in progress. He shot the ball just over 40% from the floor and also under 34% from three-point range, but he knocked down a bunch of tough shots throughout the season from the perimeter as well, and he happens to be a 6'10 power forward. That's a tough one to get out of a perimeter shooter when you're a 6'10 power forward. McDaniels, though, he struggled with turnovers as well in college. That's one thing that he's going to have to build up in the NBA. He does need a lot of developing, but I see that he's going to have a lot of upside here since he's only 19 years old. The Nets are basically all set with ball handlers on their team. So the thing I feel like Brooklyn needs is that they need some help shooting-wise. And the hope here is that they can build up Jaden McDaniels for the future to be a much better shooter than what he was during his freshman season of college. If he can keep on taking the appropriate steps upward there for Jalen McDaniels, he can help out the Brooklyn Nets a ton towards the future. And I've got him at number 20 for the Nets. So that's a wrap here to this video, my second part to the NBA mock draft video with picks number 11 through 20. Make sure to check out my first and third videos with picks number 1 through 10 and picks number 21 through 30, which I will put the link down in the description below here to those two videos, so check them out. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel as well. Also, check out all the other great content that I have going on in my channel as well. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, as this is Behind the Arc Basketball on YouTube.